Hi everyone, and welcome and thank you for joining us today. My name is Ciara and I'm the Digital Events Manager at Connecting Up and TechSoup New Zealand. Connecting Up and TechSoup are part of the Info Exchange Group, a not-for-profit social enterprise that tackles the biggest social challenges through the smart and creative use of technology. For those of you who haven't attended a webinar session with us before, Connecting Up and TechSoup facilitate an annual trailing calendar of online webinars, workshops, boot camps and webcons to help the social sector upskill all things digital. Check out our training and education menu on our website for more events that are coming online. But enough of us. I'm excited to welcome today to the ELMO 2023 HR Industry Benchmark Report with Robert Watson and Natalie Cargan. Robert has over 25 years local and international business experience and is passionate about empowering HR practitioners to expand and improve their people and process capabilities through the use of innovative technology. Robert is a strong employee advocate, passionate about ensuring employees are connected, safe, and getting the most out of their journey. Natalie today joins us from Bloom HR. She's the founder and CEO of Bloom HR, which was launched in 2011 to bring her expertise and passion for people and performance to the non-for-profit and community services sector. Bloom HR has provided outsourced HR solutions to the community services sector for over 11 years, and they have been awarded Best Place to Work in Australia, as well as Consultants of the Year for their measurable impact to the community housing sector. Before we begin, we'll start a bit of housekeeping. All your lines are muted, so if you have any technical issues, please type it into the question box on your webinar panel and I'll be able to assist you. If you have any questions during the session, please also type these questions into the question box and our panel today will answer them by the end of the webinar. We really encourage you to ask as many questions as you think throughout the session to make this as dynamic and interactive a session as possible. No question is silly, but also note your comments and questions will not appear to the entire group. If you're on a Wi-Fi connection and have multiple programs open, this can sometimes affect the quality of the audio and video of the webinar. If possible, please close all your programs to help you with the best experience today. Please note that this webinar is being recorded and a link to the recording and the slides will be sent to you after this. Before we start, I'd also like to remind you that there's a short survey at the end of the webinar and we'd really appreciate if you could take the time to complete. That's all from me and I'll hand you over to Robert and Natalie. Thank you.
Great. Thank you very much, Ciara, and welcome again to the session. Today, what we want to do, and we're thrilled to be able to do, is to walk you through our annual HR benchmark survey, which is run by ELMO, and Natalie, who is a not-for-profit specialist, has joined me to give a bit more of a context from a not-for-profit perspective as we walk through it. And we would very much like to thank Connecting Up for allowing us to run through this with you today. So the survey is a very broad survey, and we can't really go into a lot of detail, massive amount of detail. However, the survey is very rich. So please have your phones ready at the end, because we will be presenting a QR code for you to zap the QR code with your phone and download the full report, so you can have a good read of it in your own time, in your own location. All right, so let's get stuck into the next slide, the first slide, and this is just a little bit of data about where we've got the survey respondees from across Australia, and we also have a New Zealand view as well, but we're not talking about that today. We're talking very much about the Australian context. So as you can see, most of the respondees were what we call mid-market, which is between 180 and 2,000 employees, and lower mid-market, which is between 50 and 179 employees. A small contingent of small business and a small contingent of enterprise, which is in our definition over 2,000. Interestingly, average age 37 years old, and you can see the split there, which pretty much mirrors what you would expect based on the percentage of population across Australia. So yeah, it's a fairly robust survey of HR participants and professionals. This is the 4th year we've run this, so we do a little bit of time series in the analysis as well, which is really quite interesting, and we'll be showing some of that throughout the presentation. So I'll get on to the next slide. Now, this survey was taken in November. And obviously, we've all heard a lot about from media about the prospect of a recession coming in this year. So the first set of data around growth, we need to take that with a grain of salt, given that the survey was taken in November and we are now in early April. So there may be a bit of difference there, but it is interesting to see that 76% of the surveyed people said that they were expecting their business to grow from an employee perspective. And you can see that graph there saying, hey, 6% up to 10%, 48% believe that they would see a growth between 11 and 25% and so on there. So I don't think we really want to spend an awful lot of time on this particular slide, but before we do move on, Natalie, first question to you. Is this overly ambitious optimism at the back end of last year, do you think, or is this still something that we will see an impact of throughout the remainder of 2023?
I think it may be just a little bit ambitious with some of the economic changes we've had recently, more recently than when the survey was done. But as we talked about when we were preparing for this, Rob, is the not-for-profit sector, particularly community services, are the people who need to do most of the work when things get tough for Australians. So I can certainly say that there's no slowing of recruitment in the sector we operate in, and that's because more and more people need our services. And obviously that is reliant on government funding. So there's a big push for innovation from our community services and support services, not-for-profit sector as a whole, to go out and proactively lobby government for more funding, for more staff to help more Australians.
Yeah, that's a really good point, because like you say, when times get tough, that's when not-for-profits really need to kick into gear more than ever before. So yeah, there may be something there in which you say. So it'll be interesting to see how that pans out. I'll move on to the next slide. So this is the view, again, taken in November, of the areas of most challenge that people were facing. And again, if we can all put our minds back to November, the recruitment was key. Interestingly, the next three, only 1% below, is data security, upgrading of technology, and increase in remote working, and then below that, high employee turnover. So you can see the data there as it slowly drops away. And interestingly, again, healthcare was the industry within healthcare, which a lot of those would be not-for-profit, were saying, hey, upskilling and reskilling employees was critical. In the education space, bit different because they were more worried about employee well-being, and you can see the differences there across the different industries. So I think it's an interesting statistic to see that those differences there. I think even with the changes, we're still having some industries are clearly suffering from sourcing and securing talent, even after the border closures have long a distant memory now. But HR leaders are still looking both internally and externally as how they can promote the organisation to the labour market, and we've seen organisations really up their game in terms of employee value proposition. You're talking to, I used to work at IBM, and when I was there back in the noughties, it was a place to work at. It's certainly not anymore, but even the likes of the names like Google and Amazon have to fight for talent now in at least the game that I'm in, which is more sort of the IT side. Another thing that we often talk about is the cost of recruitment and the cost of internal upskilling. It's really expensive. It's really interesting that there's some of the stats, especially from the US, where they've had these surveys for a lot longer, say that in the 80s, 90% of the jobs were fulfilled internally, and now that figure's only down around 30%. So some real interesting changes there. Natalie, are you seeing some of these pressures in the not-for-profit, and how do HR leaders manage these strategic things?
Well, if you want to talk about recruitment, obviously that's the highest challenge on this list here after data security, because it would be terrible to get a breach of data, whether that's staff, employee data or customer data, particularly customer data where we're dealing with most vulnerable people. So I can understand why they're up there. And part of the ELMO solution can help with that, with both of those things. But from a strategic recruitment perspective, again, I'm going to use the word innovation, but let's be creative. Oh, sorry, there goes my dog. Everybody. So we've got a skills, not only a skills gap, but we've got a talent shortage. There's not enough Australians for what we need to do. So, and because of that, you will lose people because they'll get better offers. I lose people when they're meant to start on the day and they ring up saying, sorry, I've got a better offer. So the workforce is a little bit more fickle because they've got so much opportunity. It's just heartbreaking but I've got a client who's desperate for, support person, and then they just don't turn up on the first day or something like that. So strategically, I'll ask you to open your mind to things like older people, returning people who have retired to do work that they can do, especially in support roles and things like that. Looking at people with a disability even, so working at jobs that they can do. Obviously, not all disabilities are going to be cognitive issues. Making workplace adjustments for people who might otherwise not be working. So just trying to get that, our Indigenous employees, obviously, as well. There's a lot of support coming out on how to work, hire, support Indigenous, which are very lowly represented. So we're talking about opening up where our pool is. One of the bigger ones now that we've opened up the borders is the old visa, visa 457. I think it's something different now. For those jobs that are on the skills shortage list, which I know, particularly in social housing, but even support workers, disability workers, they are on that list. And being able to use the working holiday maker again has made our job at Bloom a little bit easier now, especially for filling temporary roles and things like that. So we're enjoying the visa holder coming back to our shores. They have some great skills, particularly in New Zealand and the UK in our sector. There's the apprenticeship, traineeship, partner with a GTO and start getting very affordable trainees in the business that then become your incubator of talent. So then leading into, you must have internal clear career progression, and you should have policies that enable you to develop and then promote from within. So your retention stuff is huge. But then, yeah, just looking outside of the box, and all of that's around partnerships. Partner with a uni, get a program developed or a certificate developed specifically for your industry. So we've got a Cert 4 in social housing, and there's obviously certs and more in disability work and case work. It's a lot of things. I hope you took some notes, but there's a lot of ways, but it's all around partnerships. And it's around a lot of activity. Can't just sit and wait for it to happen. Be more prepared.
Thanks. That's some really great advice there for the not-for-profit sector. The next slide, here we go, that I will talk about is the whole balance around flexibility in the workplace versus face-to-face. Now, Blue collar workers never did get to work from home because, the street sweeper still needed to sweep the streets. The cleaner still needed to go to work and clean things. And the person on the manufacturing line most likely still had to turn up for that. But for those of us that are in the more white collar type space, this is a topic that is still going on today. And interestingly, that you'll see there in that graph, the work from home 1 to 2 days a week is flattening, if not going slightly up. And the work from home 2 to 3 days a week is still on a downward slide. So it is interesting. Here at ELMO, we're bucking the trend. We've gone back to 4 days a week in the office. And that was more of a cultural decision for us. But I know that a lot of the people that I work with are still very much full working from home only. So, Natalie, what are you seeing in this particular space for the not-for-profits?
Definitely coming back to the office is happening. I don't know if it'll ever be full-time, though I have seen, particularly boards. I don't know if that's a demographic thing, usually being older males, right? But my boards, I'm hearing them wanting staff to come back. I think it's got a lot to do with, we've got all this office space that we're spending thousands of dollars of rents of going to waste. Yes. But that has been and that's just really, that I haven't had research on that, but that's just, what's the word when I've just heard that through the grapevine, so to speak. I've had a few boards wanting all staff back to the office. Staff is still really pushing back on that and do want at least a hybrid model. What I've seen work best is a roster. So whether it's, 1 week on, 1 week off, or people have their set days that they come into the office. And that is flexible to a degree. But then you've got to worry. Most recently, I had a working group to determine how we're going to improve our flexible working arrangements. And they currently have a roster where you tell up front each month what days you're going to be in the office. And they wanted to change it to they could change those days each week. But if they were meant to come in on a Tuesday but had a report to write to work from home, they didn't have to then replace that with another day. It was just another work from home. So that didn't really work because some people just took advantage of that and never came into the office. A good option for the very flexible workplaces where you don't need a frontline staff, which I'm implementing at one of my bigger clients next month, is all staff day. So we're hoping it's going to be a Wednesday, but obviously we'll have to see individual circumstances. But everyone comes to the office on a Wednesday, and that's the day where you do any awards you have, your birthday celebrations, your anniversary celebrations, any all group staff training, and have your cross-departmental meetings. So look, it's not going away. It has to be individual, but you can have a company policy. And then if people want to work outside of that policy, you can have your individual flexibility agreements with them. But I would recommend that they are then contracted, like this is you're working from home 4 days, not 2, or you start at midday on a Wednesday. So I would put them into a flexible working agreement with the individual. I don't know if that's very helpful, but it's not going away, but more organisations are wanting staff back in the office. And because with sorry.
I was just going to say, I think you're right, though, that you do need to have it contracted because otherwise, new boss comes in, why aren't you in the office? That's not, not appropriate. And then you go, well, I had this agreement. Yeah, but it was verbal. So I think you're right. It's best to have that written into an agreement in some way, shape or form. So at least you've got that backstop.
Yeah. Well, definitely if the person's arrangements is outside of the company's flexible work policy. So that would be true. But again, people are speaking with their feet. If we're forcing people to come back to the office and they don't want to, there are a number of other jobs for them to go to if with flexible working arrangements. So flexible working arrangements has to be part of your attraction and retention policy.
Yeah,
Otherwise,
definitely.
and that helps with the talent pool. So just filled a really difficult role for a disability housing provider. And that person lives near Newcastle, not Sydney, and will never really come to the office, but she was just the best person and they're going to make it work.
Yeah, awesome. Yep. Okay, let's move on to the next topic. And this is employee well-being. Now, this is really interesting, folks. If you have a look at that first grouping, mental health days, you can see that it's gone from 24% of respondents had a mental health day offering / program in place 2 years ago, and now it's 43%. But look at the next one along, employee assistance program. 3 years ago, 76% of respondents said they had an employee assistance program. Now it's down to 42%. That is really, really staggering. That really blew our minds. Most of the other things you'll see growth in, with the exception of no incentives in place at the far right-hand side, where it's gone from 11% down to 5%. So that's a good thing. And the way we are seeing this is an employee assistance program is a passive well-being offering, whereas the others are much more active, and there's a move away from the passive strategy to a proactive strategy, and you know that we're seeing in this data. So Natalie, why do you think more organisations are investing in these proactive initiatives? What are you seeing specifically in the not-for-profit space?
Yeah, I think just out of pure necessity and proving that it works over and over again to again retract, retain, reduce unplanned absenteeism. It's now quite an expected part. I get asked a lot by new candidates. You know, do you have yoga? Do you have discounts on the gym? Do you have a run club? Do we join a marathon? You know, so it's just part and parcel of a great employee value proposition. They really do work. I also was surprised with the drop in EAP, because to me that's just, you know, grassroots, given that most people, the majority of companies would have that. What I've recently done, I've just renegotiated an EAP for another client, and we bought 25 hours a year because we didn't get a huge uptake from it. So I think maybe staff are then, or people making decisions are looking at, say, well, our staff aren't using it. Let's keep this money and invest it in something that the staff want. So surveying, I always do a survey, like a whole benefits survey, but you can do just a wellbeing survey and asking, what do people need, and making sure that you've got something for the whole employment life cycle for all demographics, starting from your, you know, very young to those close to retirement. Make sure there's something in your program for all of it. I know you weren't asking for that advice, but I find that really important. Don't eliminate anyone. So it should be like a lucky dip, if you like, or a little where staff pick what they want. So everything is for everyone. There's their own little benefits package they can choose. So yeah, I think that it's, you know, it's proven there's thousands of reports on the benefits of wellbeing programs being part of your HR strategy. I think the trick is how to get your leaders to say, okay, we're going to invest in that, but that's something we can probably talk about a bit later. Yeah. Okay. Would you like to know anything else? There is something that has just come out around the psychosocial responsibility of employers now. So I think from the 1st of April, that there is a responsibility to look after employers' psychosocial well-being as well as their physical. So that is now legislated. So psychosocial hazards need to be identified, addressed, mitigated through training or whatever it might be. So that could be something like, I've got one poor client down in Bateman's Bay, and they just constantly get abuse from their tenants. So there's even out in the street, you know, they're a more remote regional service. So because they're trying to implement, say, salary rental increases across the board, and they're, you know, getting abused in the street, at work, over the phone. Huge red flag for me. Huge red flag. So especially with this psychosocial hazard and responsibility now from 1 April, so we're in it now. You should, as employers, definitely be adding to your risk registers or in assessing the type of emotional hazards that could be on an employee, and putting in some mitigating training or other factors to help ease or ideally eliminate that hazard.
Absolutely. I guess there's a third piece to this which we haven't spoken about, which is with the rising cost of living is beginning to really impact a lot of people, and that has flow-on impacts also to mental health and stress levels as well. So, and you know, we're seeing here things like health insurance subsidies, gym membership subsidies, etc.
Yeah.
Anything else that you think not-for-profits should be looking at to help their employees in that particular arena?
Oh, that's a good question. I'm sure there's lots of things. Well, some of the unis, like this is not possible for everyone, but they do have subsidised childcare, which is huge. Definitely. One thing that I would definitely do is introduce paid parental leave. I know the government has an option now, but it's only at the minimum rate. I think every employer should be offering some paid parental leave for the primary caregiver as a given. And something I've just implemented in another client recently, I'm not sure it's about well-being, it's probably touching more on the pay gap, is making sure that women who are on parental leave, or men who are on parental leave, if they are the primary caregiver, which is happening more and more these days, is to make sure that they are part of the annual remuneration review process. If that's linked to a performance review, make sure the performance review is done before they leave as part of their going off on maternity leave or parental leave practice, and then making sure that they're included in that increase. So yeah, we were just about to have a woman come back, and she would have, again, this is her second baby, so she would have for the second time, you know, fallen behind her male counterparts. This is a blue collar workforce. They're electronics engineers. So yeah, so really male dominated, and because she's the one off caring for the babies, she would have dropped down. So having really good policies for women are important, not where they're obviously more beneficial than for men, at least equal, keeping up their salary increases when they're away, and supporting the family financially for a piece when they go off.
Yeah, makes a lot of sense to me. All right, let's move on. So this is the first time we've really seen employee data security rise into the top ranks of the challenges from an HR perspective. You know, traditionally it's been the domain of the IT people, or the IT department, should there be such a one. But you know, IT is now everybody's, you know, concern as we become more and more digitized. And you know, there's been so many cyber attacks over the last few years that we've all been hearing about. You know, we had, was it Medibank Private, and then we had Optus, and just here in Australia, and there's been many, many more that I'm sure you'd all be aware of. And that has a massive impact legally. It has a massive impact to the brand, the reputational aspect. And being able to securely store data is absolutely paramount. Whether that be employee data, customer data, supplier data. Most of the breaches that we have seen have been customer data, but there have been employee data breaches as well. And when you think about the data that you hold on behalf of your employees, you've got address and sort of that kind of thing, but also pay rates, annual salaries, you got tax file numbers, you got photographs, you got vaccination data, a lot of highly sensitive stuff. So it does really need to be protected, and there are questions over how to do that, how long to hold the data. And as I said, HR practitioners are now beginning to become quite aware of this kind of stuff. So it does become imperative that it is being addressed. So I guess I'd like to ask you, Natalie, what are you hearing from the people you work with about data security?
Yeah, obviously hugely important. And I have been scammed myself as a HR leader. Let me forewarn you. I have a number of clients. So I have lots of email addresses that are HR at blah, or people and culture at blah. So I'm sort of that HR inbox for a few organizations. So I do respond to a lot of emails and a lot of different clients, but I received an email from the employee name was the email. So I saw her name to say it was Natalie Carrington with the underline, knowing that it was hyperlinked with an email address behind it. Didn't click on that. Big mistake. They asked to the HR at blah.com.au email address. They asked for the bank details form to update their bank details. Not an uncommon question. They didn't have a HRIS, so they couldn't with self-service. So there was no going in and doing it yourself. So I just quickly flicked to the form. She sent it back. Oh no, she sent it back, and I forwarded it to payroll. I didn't open it. I didn't look at it. I just saved it in a personnel file and sent it to payroll. And then the next pay cycle, this lady contacted payroll and said, "Oh, I didn't get my pay." And they looked through. "Yeah, you changed your bank account details." No, I didn't. They found the email because I always save the request, and IT had a look at it, and behind her name was a phony email address. And I can't believe it. Like, I was just felt dreadful. Number one, I'm not even, I'm not an employee. I'm a consultant. You'd think I should know better, but I didn't. So be forewarned, and if anything seems a little bit unusual, always make sure you click on the name to look behind it. My team got an email from me with a fake email address the other morning that was, "Hey, I need you to do something really quickly for me. Can you transfer me so-and-so amount of money?" It's just everywhere. So as in what you can do is, have really secure systems that have two-factor authentication in there, and they're safely minding your data. The other issue that's been coming up is when staff use their own equipment. So we're currently offering at one client the opportunity to have a company-paid phone where you have to have two devices. And they'll have to choose whether they want to use their own phone or the company phone. But if they have their own phone, they're going to have to install two-factor authentication and all sorts of things. So it's just making sure you're collaborating on any sort of new system with your IT experts, whether that's your project managers or you've got internal people, and just have a lens over any decision you make is how we're exposed here from a data security perspective, and include that in all your decision making, implementation plans, and things like that. because
Yeah. And that goes on to the next slide, which is a continuation. So we talked a lot about the technology, but really, when you think about it, you've got to have policies in place that say, as you were just talking about there, and that, you've got to have two-factor authentication on all your key applications as a way of saying, is it really Natalie? Is it really Natalie that's logging in? Let's make doubly sure, and that's what two-factor authentication does. But also the training. You made that little hiccup for that poor lady on her pay, but if you can educate the people to, as you said, if there's even a slight whiff of funniness about it, just double check. This is not normal. Why is she sending this to me? Let's just make sure it's legitimate. Give the woman a quick call and say, did you just send this? Whatever that training is, I think it's really important that the people are taught to be aware. What was the old saying? Be alert but not alarmed. To those kinds of spams. We here at ELMO, we have a collaborative piece of software called Slack. Many of you would be familiar with it. And we have a channel on there that everybody belongs to. And, we share scam texts, scam emails, and say, be aware of this one, please don't click on it if you see it, that kind of thing. So I think that those sorts of, that sort of stuff, plus a bit of we have some mandatory training that we go through. But what have you seen in the not-for-profit space as a best of breed in that particular side, Natalie?
Yeah, really strong policies, and the other, and making sure those policies are implemented. So making sure they're part of your onboarding process. So that's, I would even recommend, as part of their, first day, not just reading a policy and signing, yes, I agree, because everyone just signs them and doesn't actually read them. But doing a real face-to-face, whether it's you one-on-one or whether it's the manager's responsibility or IT, they spend 15 minutes with IT. I've just implemented that somewhere. On your first day, you spend 15 minutes with IT, not even long at all. And in bigger organizations, you could do it, in the first week, depending on how many recruits you have. But this company doesn't have a lot. So it's one-on-one on the person's first day. They go over there, they get their equipment, and they're shown how to sign in. They're shown how to use two-factor authentication on different devices, and they're told what to look out for and where they can find more information, and the general IT address to raise an IT request or whatever it might be. So I think the onboarding is absolutely critical, and even if it's as simple as, hey, IT, can you spend 15 minutes with every new starter, whether it's a group of them or one-on-one, that will save you a lot. So it's around education, and then, backed up by really tight policy. And if it's not meaningful, purposeful, not the disciplinary process, but if people are time and time again breaching these policies, whether they're going to websites that putting the company at risk, or just continually ignoring and clicking on links they shouldn't, just sort of coming down on them in the best way possible, whether that's providing extra training and support. But you need to protect your data.
Absolutely, and like I said at the beginning, it not only is it damaging financially, but it can be legally, and worst of all, reputationally. Especially if you've got a quality name, it can really bring it right down. So we have one more slide on this particular topic, which is, despite the risks that we've just been talking about, there's still a lot of companies using spreadsheets for both customer and employee data, which is really not a good look. You end up with no single source of truth, different data on different spreadsheets, on very similar looking but different spreadsheets on different laptops. The risk of exposure is very, very high when you're just using Excel or something similar. So it really is a concern to hear that these manual methods are still being used. You know, the other day we were helping here at ELMO, helping a client move off from, you know, paper-based compactors and manual files, which was a shock to some of our younger folks who had never even seen one of those before. So, you know, these kinds of things are really, really important. And you know, we're really at ELMO helping a lot of companies move off these older manual processes into the new world of digital applications for their employee data, and there are other, you know, obviously other solutions for customer data and so on and so forth. But Natalie, you know, one of the things that we find is that specifically with where we play as ELMO, a lot of HR leaders do struggle to get budget and you know, even harder to get buy-in, and sometimes from execs and boards where they need to get the approval to put in a quality system that will help prevent all of these problems, but also improve productivity and so on and so forth. How do you see that playing out, and do you help your clients you know, get that cut through so that they can get a voice at the table?
Yes, very much so. And obviously we have recently done that with a large charity who have just taken on you know, payroll and time sheeting. It's going to save a lot of time and errors, but it's historically really difficult to justify a HRIS. Decision makers of these people are not generally an end user, so they don't really understand the urgency, and a lot of the benefits are you can't add them up saying we're going to save this much, because it's often you know, that soft benefit to employee experience. But just as much as you can, try to find a cost saving. Obviously, I'm not encouraging you to, you know, eliminate a HR role because you're going to automate all these processes. That would not be ideal. If anything, when you're implementing a system, you have to factor in swelling the team for a little bit whilst it embeds and you've done the training, the rollout. But my number one thing is to understand that they are not overly expensive. You can find systems that are not overly expensive. The next thing is to definitely use the data security as a measurable impact, and talk about the risks of breaches to the data, of the reputational damage that would have. So cybersecurity or security of the data is another great way to get these things over the line. And rather than, like, when you're selling it, going into like the technical detail of like how the system works. So, oh, look, it does this and that's so great. Focus more on the benefits and the results. So, for example, if an employee can keep their banking details up to date themselves, we're going to eliminate the need for paper and hacking and all sorts of stuff. So better protection, less administration processing, which enables you to focus on those more strategic things like a great retention strategy or an employee value proposition that's going to attract more talent. Yeah, so focus on the benefits rather than the actual technology features, because as end users, decision makers aren't generally that, and so that's not, you know, they might put in their own belief or something, but a really obvious way, if you currently outsource your payroll, which a lot of small not-for-profits do, getting the cost of that and then and comparing that to if you have a great little simple payroll system that integrates then with your onboarding and performance and other modules, then you can eliminate the external person to start processing internally. So try to look as much as you can as the quantitative dollar figure saving, but it's difficult. It's very difficult to do. So yeah, happy to help anyone who would like some more information on pulling together a business case and a return on investment for.
Absolutely. That sounds great. All right. We're getting close to time, but look, this is the last of the sort of data slides, and again, it comes back to data, but this is a slightly different take on it, and this is more and more HR people are relying on data collected to make decisions. So this is when you aggregate all that data up, and when you have an HRIS solution that will enable you to do these kinds of things. So you can see patterns, whether it be you've got a much higher churn rate of staff in WA than the rest of the states. Why would that be? Or it may, other patterns that you'll be able to see, and you can't manage what you can't measure, and if you can measure it, you'll be able to take proactive steps. So this is a fascinating slide where you can see over the time we've seen fewer and fewer doing little and more doing more with their data, and making basic information-backed decisions is absolutely mission critical. So Natalie, what have you seen in this particular space, and are you helping your not-for-profit clients sort of be able to do this?
Yeah, definitely. It's always been something that HR have, again, not done so well, because we're people, we're not numbers people, but it's more and more important. So if you're thinking of doing any development yourself this year, or if you definitely want to improve or get advancement in your career, it's HR metrics that will hold you apart from the rest, because it's how decisions are made. It's also if you know what your workforce is doing, you will then know where to focus your energies or where improvements need to be made. So there's a number of ways we get data in HR, and if it's all in the one spot, like, and this is not a sales thing, but like an ELMO, it's so much easier, because we're not just measuring, turnover and how much we're paying everyone. You do staff surveys to see what employee engagement is like. You use recruitment, see where are your best people coming from, like what job board or what recruitment technique. You use performance management and development processes to see what capabilities are people generally scoring lower in, and that can drive your training strategy. You get your exit interview data to work out, are there some managers who are just losing people left, right, and center, and what do we do about that? So there's not just one metrics or one source, it's through a number of HR processes, from even an onboarding survey, like how did you like the experience, what could we have done better, right through to the offboarding. So to have all that in one place just saves you a lot of time of spreadsheets of all the onboarding, and then serving a survey monkey, and then looking in your performance reviews and going through all your performance reviews and going, oh, what's the training needs this year? So for you guys as HR professionals, I'm assuming most of you are HR professionals here, to have that data helps you improve your programs and services, and know where to focus your recruitment energies and training energies and stuff like that.
Yeah.
But in general, go on. Sorry, Rob.
No, I think what you said is exactly right. It makes perfect sense that like I summarized it before, is you can't manage what you can't measure, and you've got to be able to see what the data is telling you before you can actually take proper action against what the data is telling you. It makes perfect sense.
Yeah, that's right. And then from a decision maker point of view, similar to getting an investment signed off, it's how decision makers make decisions is by metrics. So they want to see stuff that is quantifiable. How much does we spend on training? What's our staff turnover? Is it healthy or is it too big? Leave balances is always hits the bottom line. So they want to see that leave has been managed properly. So it's the metrics, but I think more importantly, it's for HR to be more effective in what they're doing.
Awesome. All right. So, yeah, look, reality. So just in summary, this is the sort of a 4-point summary of what we've covered. Yeah, there's more and more challenges in store for HR, like we've just talked about. The uncertainty is pretty much here to stay. There's an opportunity for upskilling and internal mobility. Data. How do we use it? How do we store it? And how do we secure it? All of those things we've sort of talked about today. For those of you that have your phones handy, I strongly recommend you scan this QR code. This QR code will take you to the actual full HR industry benchmark report, and you can download that through here and read it to read the detail should you wish to. So I'll just pause here for a moment or two for you to get your phone out and scan that QR code. And if you don't have your phone handy or you have it turned off, don't worry. We will be providing this deck to Connecting Up, and Connecting Up will distribute it to all of you people that attended it. And I will move on here. So Natalie, this is your page.
Yeah, which I totally didn't update. I'm sorry. This is my fault. I just realised, but yeah, look, you can just go to bloomhr.com.au and send us an email. But our email address is actually hello@bloomhr.
Oh, is it? Sorry. Okay.
But I look a hell of a lot better in that picture than I do today. So thanks for understanding. That was a special photo shoot day. Very rare.
So what I'll do is I'll update that to hello@bloomhr.com.au before I send it to Connecting Up for distribution. All right.
Thank you. And yeah, you can find us on LinkedIn, Twitter, and Facebook. So reach out to us on any of them.
Awesome. And lastly, if you scan that, it'll take you through to the Connecting Up page for ELMO. Or again, you can contact us at elmosoftware.com.au. We're also on LinkedIn, Twitter, and Facebook as well. So, folks, hopefully you've enjoyed that. I'll hand now back to Connecting Up. Was there any questions that we needed to address before we close out?
I haven't had any questions yet, so if anyone has a quick question for Robert and Natalie, fire ahead and I can read it out for the guys to read for you. Any question, doesn't matter how silly you seem it is, always good to ask.
Absolutely.
How many people do we have on? I can't see anyone.
We
had up to 10 people. We have over 31 companies registered, so a lot of people can, as Robert mentioned, look back over this. It's recorded afterwards. And I'll have those slides when Robert updates just your contact details, and we'll have that available on our website later today or tomorrow, along with the recording, so it'll be available for anyone to view after that as well. So yeah.
Awesome.
Oh, here we go. Is there an ELMO feature to send out surveys to new onboardees? Is that a Robert question?
Yes, we have a, well, if you have we have a separate survey module which can be used to do exactly that. Yes.
Yep.
Yeah, it's so you would, if you were using our technology in a holistic way, then yeah, we absolutely can do that. Happy to have that conversation offline if that person would wish to.
Yep. Anyone else got any questions before we close today?
You're right on time. Well done, guys.
Good time. Perfect.
Good timing.
Yeah. All right. If anyone else has any questions that they think of afterwards, Robert and Natalie's contact details are up on the screen. So yeah, get in contact with them And I'll put your contact details in the email link I'll send to everyone as well, so you might get more questions then. But other than that, thank you to Robert and Natalie for joining us today, and thank you for everyone that has attended. And just as there's a short survey at the end of the webinar, if you can complete it, that'll help us make sure that we bring the best webinars to you. Oh, yeah, perfect. All right, guys.
Thank you very much.
Thank you for joining us
having
today.
me.
Yes, thank you,
Bye-bye,
Natalie.
everybody.
Bye,
Robert.
everyone.
Bye-bye.
Bye. Ooh, how do we?
How was that, Rob?